Welcome to African Affairs, the television program on Africa. We are in the studio of DCTV in Washington, D.C., United States of America. Today we have the privilege and the honor to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Adebowale Adefiyi, the Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to United States. His Excellency has had a tremendous practical experience in conflict resolution for over 22 years, has engaged in research and teaching for 12 years. He has been a deputy high commissioner to United Kingdom, a high commissioner to Jamaica, a high commissioner to Belize. He has a PhD in history and has been the head of Department of History at Lagos University in Nigeria. He has been an advisor to Commonwealth General Secretary on African Affairs and also advisor to ECOWAS President on Democracy and Governance. Your Excellency, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Professor Alim Hailu is a professor in the Department of African Studies at Howard University. He has been with me since the inception. He's a member of the board of directors. Welcome again, Professor Alim Hailu. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Nigeria-African relations. We have mentioned this in our talk about Nigeria. Nigeria has had connections with many countries in Africa. In fact, it's nicknamed the big brother of African countries. He is looked upon by African countries as the leader, as the largest democracy in Africa. What does this imply as far as Nigeria is concerned, Your Excellency?
Well, let me say that for obvious reasons and for reasons that came out of our history as a nation, Africa has continued to be the centerpiece of our foreign policy for a number of reasons, practical reasons. One, in terms of size and population. Nigeria's population is twice the rest of West Africa combined. Nigeria is the nerve center of West Africa and also virtually the nerve center of African continent. 1 out of every 6 Africans is a Nigerian, and 1 out of every 11 black persons in the whole world is a Nigerian. So Nigerians have a natural feeling of attachment to black people all over the world. And that's what our late leader, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, was referring to as Nigeria's manifest destiny to be the leader of Africa and to be the leader of black peoples all over the world. Nigeria's progress affects the plight of Africans outside Africa, in the diaspora, whether you go to America or in the Caribbean. And so Nigeria feels, naturally, the typical Nigerian feels inclined towards other African people and feels that he has to do to be in the vanguard of all that is good to Africa. So in terms of, this is why when we had independence, we were committed to the eradication of apartheid, racist and minority regimes in Southern Africa, because we think that with us being independent and our fellow brothers still be under oppression, our independence was meaningless. And we also believe in the integration of the African continent, starting with our close borders, our close neighbors in West Africa and Africa. So Africa has been the centerpiece of our foreign policy. We are for West African integration. We are for West African unity. We are leading the cause for West African integration, African unity. And so anything African means a lot to Nigeria. We have apart from our commitment to racist and minority regimes, Nigeria and Togo were the main conveyors of ECOWAS. We played so much role in bringing ECOWAS to being, and ECOWAS is called Economic Community of West African States. It's an organization dedicated to the economic integration and economic development of West Africa. Of course, it's in line with the current thinking in the political world The thing now is regionalism. You must put your resources together, take advantage of scale, and put your resources together to develop your people. So ECOWAS, with ECOWAS in headquarters in Abuja, ECOWAS is dedicated towards promoting the integration of West Africa and economic unity of West African peoples. ECOWAS has achieved quite a lot. And to begin with, Nigeria maintains the ECOWAS budget. Nigerians pays about 75% of ECOWAS budget because we know it is in our interest that all West African people should be united. Nigeria also has been leading the fight for, so far ECOWAS has achieved a lot. There's, we call the free movement of peoples. West Africans can move across their border without having to collect visas or anything. And we are putting taking advantage of scale, trading among ourselves and ensuring that we have a common custom tariff, custom external tariff policy. We have approach. We promote trade among ourselves. We promote. There's a gas pipe from Nigeria going towards West African countries, and we do a lot of things in terms of economic integration, sponsored essentially by Nigeria. Apart from that, ECOWAS try to sort out political problems in West Africa. ECOWAS stands for democracy in West Africa. And I was party to some of the activities of ECOWAS while serving as advisor on democracy and good governance. I was party to what ECOWAS did in Guinea-Conakry, Guinea-Bissau, Niger, and Cote d'Ivoire to ensure that principles of democracy thrive, because we believe that you cannot have economic development, you cannot have economic integration if you don't have democracy. And that's where we stand. And we promote the same ideas all over Africa. We'll talk more about that later.
Professor Lemhaili, what's your take on this?
I believe that Nigeria from its inception has been part of the aspirations and goals of people of African descent in the continent and worldwide. And it's been tied in its history, in the way it's tried to build its institutions, to be part of this aspiration. Early on, from the independence days, the leading figures of the post-independence period, from Azikwe to the others in Nigeria, along with their colleagues in the other parts from Nkrumah and Rere and others, have always seen the destiny of Africa tied, their welfare, their security together. And in many ways, Nigeria has delivered as a bastion of security. The 15 nations comprised in the ECOWAS looked to it for security when wars erupted in Sierra Leone, in Liberia. Nigeria played a big part in stabilizing it. And even across the region to other parts, it has been a major player in Rwanda, Angola, Darfur, and even other parts of the world where it sent troops to Yugoslavia, of all places. So it's been a place of hope. And it's being a strong nation, a strong big nation, has been as an asset in terms of stabilizing. And I'm reminded of the American saying, the rising boat lifts, the rising tide lifts all boats. We see how Japan, as the prosperous nation, was instrumental in influencing security and development in the Pacific region. I feel Nigeria has and could play that role in the West, as South Africa and other nations in other parts could play. So both in terms of thinking, in terms of the way the intellectuals have envisioned the country in literature, in Pan-Africanism, in terms of building institutions, has been hoped as a bastion of strength and security and dignity, both for the nations in the region and in the continent as a whole, and beyond that for the African world. As pointed out, it comprises a big chunk of the African world, so it can be a great player in world transformation.
Well, you all have alluded to the part that Nigeria has played in liberation struggles in the African continent, especially in the 80s. I know that Obasanjo was said to have even visited Mandela in prison when he was a member of EPG, Eminent Persons Group, and made it a cardinal point of his foreign policy that Africa must be liberated. We also saw what happened in Angola with the rivalry between Jonas Savimbi and Augustina Neto. So Nigeria played a prominent role. What I want, how much toll has this taken in Nigeria financially and in human toll?
Well, I don't think we for us in Nigeria, we do not think of the cost in terms of financial or human, in the sense that we believe that there's this feeling in our minds that so long as any African is under bondage in any other part of the continent, our victory is meaningless. For the simple reason that if apartheid is allowed to thrive, racism in other parts of the world can thrive. So if you cannot be liberated in your own continent, how come you come to America and be expected to be treated as an equal with other races? Therefore, the issue is our integrity, our personality, our standing as a man. So we do not count the cost in terms of finance or anything. So it's more or less of a belief in our dignity. It's liberation from slavery. It's more important to be free than to be under one bondage and be fed. So we were not counting that, because I was a member of what we call the national, we call NACAP, National Association for National Committee for Action Against Apartheid. We campaigned for Nigerians to donate part of their salary to join the liberation forces in Southern Africa, so that the money will be collected and be given to the liberation forces. It was the Obasanjo government that first started giving financial contribution to the liberation forces, and then Nigeria was so active in the war against apartheid and racism and minority regimes that we were officially declared a frontline state, yes, despite the distance from the area. So we did not count and during the Angolan Civil War, we chose to support MPLA simply because it refused to do the will of the Western powers. It was more authentic, it was more African, it was more traditional, it was not genuine. So that was why we stood behind the MPLA regime and got them to power. So we thought that, like I said, it's our integrity, our personal, collective, individual integrity that mattered. And so we did not count the cost and you could see that in all this, we were going everywhere to support them, to support the liberation forces, whether it is, in fact, the contact group, when Jimmy Carter was trying to discuss the issue of Angola or Zimbabwe, they had to come to Lagos first, where the headquarters was, and met Obasanjo to discuss what to do. And Obasanjo's regime nationalized British Petroleum when they were not going to do what we wanted to do on the issue of Rhodesia then. We nationalized British Petroleum. This caused a lot of discomfort to Margaret Thatcher, and to let them know that we meant business. After nationalizing British Petroleum, the next meeting of Commonwealth leaders decided to move on Zimbabwe and set up the process that resulted in the emergence of Mugabe as president of Zimbabwe. So we were prepared to do whatever we had to do to liberate fellow Africans from bonds of racism and minority regime. It was not a question of money. It was our integrity was at stake, and we were recognized as a member of the frontline state. And it eventually brought a lot of prestige to Nigerians, to Nigeria and to Nigerians. But then we did not. It was not a question of cost. No, the cost did not matter.
Prof. Darling,
the saying goes, freedom is not free, and of course there is cost attached to it in terms of money, material terms, in terms of Nigerian soldiers